Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and I'd like to thank Inon or Inon for sponsoring this episode. Obviously, produce a range of torches and strobes and add-on lenses, which are great for all underwater photographers. So thank you very much. As always, I'm going to introduce my fellow correspondent, Alex. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Adam. Good to be here.
Good to see you. And what I thought, obviously the big news this week has been the release of the Sony Alpha 1 mirrorless camera. And obviously big song and dance about it. So I thought it would be worthwhile probably discussing it and getting Alex's impressions on what he thought about the top line specs. Obviously, important to stress, we haven't shot this camera. It's not been underwater yet, as far as we know, so those are all unknown, but it's just some ideas on the specs as we read them. So what do you think then, Alex?
Well, I think it's very exciting because I think, for me, it does seem a camera that's attempting to move the game on.
Yeah.
I think, across the board, the specs. And when we did our predictions for the year ahead, we talked about the fact that because the camera technology now is so mature, so good, actually the emphasis is actually on the camera companies to make bigger steps now to get people to upgrade, because the cameras we've got are so capable. And I think it's harder and harder for them to do that. And actually probably what we're going to see is actually really quite noticeable steps like this, because I think soft upgrades are just not going to wash with people. If you want people to get into the new cameras from the current cameras, you need to give a big step like this that seems to really move the game on. So it's really exciting for Sony users, but if you're not a Sony user, it's still really exciting because the gauntlet is thrown down to the other manufacturers to do the similar thing and take it on. I think it's quite a nice balance of specs. They've not gone crazy on resolution. I think there's still, that marketing emphasis that you've got to top what the others are doing. And I think 50 is a good round number for high. I don't think it's really much difference between 40 and 50. I don't think that in terms of the end result, I don't think there's any need for cameras to be any higher than that. But there's a marketing need to be seen to be topping others, and 50 is a good round number that beats others that are in the 40s. So I think it's a good sensible place without being crazy. But what excites me are the other specs, and I'm not a video shooter, but the video, the 8K video is incredible. But also the ability to do high speed shooting at ridiculous 30 frames a second. Now, as an underwater photographer, there's really not that much that you really want to be shooting at that sort of speed. And if you are, you're going to spend a lot of your life editing your pictures down, because 2 or 3 seconds of that gives you a lot of work in post. But nonetheless, it's that sort of capability may well allow people to capture pictures we haven't seen before. So it's always exciting when new capability comes in.
Sure.
I am sort of I like the fact that the Sonys have the image stabilization built in. And with the big amounts on these cameras, the fact that they can deliver improvements in lens performance over traditional SLR bodies, I think is also really exciting. I think the downsides for underwater photography of the Sony system are quite well reported. Oh, the other spec I'm actually really excited about from an underwater photography perspective is the sync speed, the flash sync speed. I think that is great. We've not seen any manufacturer feel under any pressure to do something about that for a long time. Because they've all operated under the thing, well, if you want access to this, you have to buy our custom flash gun, and then you can have any sync speed you like. And we've obviously now got the first high-speed flash sync flashes for available now for underwater use, which you can use with almost any camera if you've got the right converters for them and you've got the right flash gun. So it's maybe less of an issue than it was, but it's great to see a mainstream manufacturer going, we're going to make native high-speed flash sync with any flash gun part of our showing off specs.
And it's quite interesting that they've gone as well with the electronic shutter. It's the flash sync is a 200th of a second. With the mechanical shutter, it's a 400th of a second. So which strikes me as being somewhat the wrong way around. But nevertheless, I think absolutely what you're saying, Alex. The 400th is 2 clicks. It's a big deal, I think.
Yeah, I don't quite understand how flash sync works on an electronic shutter.
No,
as to why it can't be unlimited.
no, I
So I
agree.
don't understand how Sony do their electronic shutter, because an electronic shutter is simply is opening whatever mirror there is, or not mirror, opening the shutter up
Yep.
so that it doesn't make a noise when you shoot, and then just turning the chip on and off.
Yep.
And I don't understand why you can't sync at any shutter speed with an electronic shutter.
Yep.
So I don't understand why that's limited, and I certainly don't understand why it's slower than the mechanical shutter, because it's the mechanics of a shutter that makes flash sync limited, not the sensor. So that
That's
doesn't
my
make sense
Sunday,
to me, and I don't know why it's like that. But I'm sure that there's a good reason for it.
and
I
it would be great if someone would tell us in the
Yeah.
comment section. I'm sure someone will know why it's the case. But yeah, it didn't make sense to me. Against the fact, obviously, you're still very, very glad to hear, as you are, that they're using flash sync as a characteristic for improvement, which is, for a long time that hasn't been the case. So that's really good news. Yeah.
And I do think we are going to see these big landmark cameras this year. And I suspect that this camera would have been out last summer at the Olympics.
Yeah.
It's probably Sony's Japan Olympics camera, and then they didn't launch it last summer, and then with pandemic and things, they're like, let's delay it. And it's like, well, we really ought to get that out there now. So I think that this might well also trip the other companies into, oh, all those cameras we were going to launch last summer at the Olympics. It now feels too long to wait till, if there is even a 2021 Olympics. So let's start pushing them out in the first quarter of this year and get access to some of that money people haven't been spending because they've been working but not being able to do any leisure activities. So maybe we might see quite a few cameras coming over the next few weeks, even though there's no big shows going on for obvious reasons. I think the downside of this camera for underwater photography is the fact that the Sony lens choice, certainly the native lenses, do not cater particularly well for underwater photography, with one main macro lens, which kind of falls a little bit in the middle of what you get with full frame SLR cameras, in that you have options either side of it, and this kind of falls in the middle. I'm aware that you can adapt a variety of lenses to use on this to cover those things, but then you're not getting the most out of the system you've invested in, and also you've often got quite limited autofocus performance. And I do hear lots of people who shoot the Sonys moan that the 90mm, which is their macro lens, is quite a hunter. It doesn't lock on focus very well, and I don't understand why that is, because other lenses on the exact same camera body are great. So I think that lens could do with an improvement. And then the fact that Sony don't currently have a native fisheye of their own, I think is a big hole in their lens lineup. But I suspect they're going to address that soon now, because they've got a huge number of people out there shooting. I think that fisheyes are popular with filmmakers just for special effects and extreme sports type shooting. And I don't see why Sony don't make one. They're not difficult to make fisheyes. They're one of the easier lenses to design. And I think Sony it would be a quick way to make quite a lot of money, is for them to make a native fisheye lens. So I can see that coming.
I did hear as well that Sigma are talking about doing both E mount, so the Sony mount, and Z mount in their lenses, and that'd be very interesting to see what they do with that. So that Sigma 15 mil fisheye is a pretty good lens, and there's no reason why that on this camera wouldn't be a good option. And actually, as it happens on the Nikon Z, it's not what we're really talking about then. But so I think that's it might well be the case that a third party is going to get in and produce the fisheye before Sony managed to get around to it. That could well be the case. Time will tell, of course. But pretty interesting to see whether possibly even Takina or Sony, Takina or Sigma. I think a couple of other little points about the camera that I'm personally not a great fan of EVFs. There are a number of issues, but they obviously are addressing them. And one of the top line specs on the camera is it has a refresh rate of 240 frames a second. So the idea is obviously that it's refreshing the image a lot more regularly, a lot quicker than has been the case in the past, which should improve the performance. I'm concerned. Still,
that's got to have an impact on battery life, though.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah,
but I'm sure you'll have a battery that lasts a dive, so I guess it's not such a significant thing.
Unless you're filming, in which case. But I mean, then the guys are now developing housings with external power, so that may well get around that particular issue. until we actually get it in our hands and actually have a look through it, we won't be able to tell this. But I'm not sure that there's no mention that they've actually managed to deal with the dynamic range issue with EVFs. I'm not sure whether that'll be the case. They quote, and this is separate to the EVF, they quote 15 stops of dynamic range on stills for the camera, which is pretty remarkable for a full frame camera. Whether that's reflected in what you can see through the viewfinder, I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah, no, very exciting. So this camera doesn't fit in any existing housings.
No.
So, and I suspect it's going to be pretty well catered for. Yeah. Certainly by the manufacturers that have already Sony housings in there. The housing manufacturers that already have Sony housings in their listings, and I think also the manufacturers who are developing housings for filming as well, because I think this will be widely used for both.
Yep.
So
there's commitments from Icolite and Seacam that they're definitely producing housings for this. I would imagine Nauticam will almost definitely produce one as well, and I mean the others obviously I would imagine will probably follow suit. I can't see a situation where there's not going to be a large number of housing choices available for this camera. The other sort of possibly the last point is it is a $6,500 camera. It's not an inexpensive piece of gear, that puts it up there with top end choices from all the camera manufacturers. So it's very much, I think probably on the specs it probably does hold its ground against those for the money, but it's important to bear in mind this is not a cheap camera, so when you're buying this you probably want to be sure that that the system, as you mentioned Alex, things like the lens availability things, is going to be good as well. Otherwise it represents a significant investment that's not going to deliver the results that you want it to. Anyway, exciting times. Obviously, I'm sure, as you mentioned, Alex, we're going to see more of these over the next few months, probably, as the manufacturers come out with more and more stuff. But I think that's all we need to say about that for today. So thank you very much, Alex. Again, I'd like to thank Inon for sponsoring the episode. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and please feel free to explain to us how mechanical versus electrical shutter flash sync speeds vary in the comment section below, and drop us a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again soon.